Let's move on, though, into the next team. We got 3 left going into the Kentucky Wildcats. And the first thing I want to lead off with them is just a little look at last season. I prepped you for one thing. I'm going to throw another thing at you, Sean.
Cool, great.
This is a team that was 2 plays away against Florida and against Ole Miss from winning 6 SEC games last year. They finished 4-4. 2 plays bounced the other way. They go 6-4 or 6-2 in conference. They go what they would have finished 9-5 overall, and would have been the second best team in the SEC. The bad news that was the good news. The bad news last year is they were outgained by nearly 75 yards per game in league play, and out of the last 4 of their final games overall. So for me, well, for you, I'll ask, looking at that coming into this season, can Kentucky fans kind of assume that, hey, maybe it's going to be a little bit different this year than it was last year?
I don't know if it's really going to be different because looking at the team, there's not any major things that I look out that really jump off the page. And I think the one thing, too, is in big games, Kentucky didn't play. Against Georgia, they got smoked, 42-13. Yes, that was at Georgia, but still, I mean, it wasn't close. You look at that Louisville game at Kentucky. That's a massive game right there. Fighting for the bragging rights of Kentucky there. You get smoked 44-17. In the Music City Bowl, 24-23, you lose to Northwestern. And then also that Florida game, you lose there. You say 2 plays away. You lose against Ole Miss. You weren't able to win the big games. Yeah, you beat Kentucky, or you beat Southern Miss, you beat Eastern Kentucky. You got a win over South Carolina, and you beat Eastern Michigan, but outside of that, there's nothing that really surprises me or gives me too much hope. You beat teams that you were supposed to, and you got blown out in teams that you weren't supposed to even be close at. I look at this Kentucky team, and I think it's going to be more of the same this year. Central Michigan, I think Kentucky should win that one. I think they're probably going to lose to Florida against Dan Mullen. I think Mullen's a better coach than McElwain, and I think now this is going to be a Florida team with a true coach and a true direction. They'll beat Murray State. Mississippi will be a close game, but I think Kentucky should be favored because it's a new regime there. South Carolina, they should lose. Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher, I think they probably lose that one, especially being at Texas A&M. Vanderbilt, they should win that one. Missouri, that's at Missouri. I favor Missouri in that one. Georgia, they're probably going to get smoked. Tennessee, they should win that one, but I wouldn't be surprised, again, like we talked about in the Tennessee football preview, if Tennessee was able to win that one at Tennessee. Middle Tennessee, you should win there. And with Louisville, Lamar Jackson's gone, but you still got smoked by 44-17 in that game. So
here's my biggest worry.
I think this is a team that's in the middle of the pack.
I don't even think that. This could be a team that's a bottom feeder this year in the SEC East. The reason why I say that is I told you the good, I told you the bad. Do you want to know the worst for this team coming into this year? They don't have a quarterback who has taken an FBS snap.
That doesn't matter to me.
They haven't taken, it's like, for me, I look at it and it's like, all right, who are you going to start? Terry Wilson, who, he began his career at Oregon, then he came from JUCO. Or are you going to go with Gunnar Hoke, who apparently ended the spring as the front runner for the starting job? To me, I think that's going to play I'm not saying it's like, oh, you're not going to win a single game this year. I think that's going to play into it, especially if Hoke is the guy maybe over a Wilson who has at least been at a JUCO and have gotten some snaps.
Let's look at this, though. Who is the national championship runner-up? Georgia. They had a freshman quarterback. Let's look at the team that won the national championship. Who'd they win it with? A freshman quarterback. It doesn't matter if you haven't taken an FBS snap. It matters if you can throw the damn ball.
And the one thing,
or if you can run the ball.
The only thing I would say to that, too, is the coaches, Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, much different than Mark Stoops.
But still, I mean, that's not the big. Like, you gotta play a snap before. Like, the questions with Tennessee is we've seen those guys play snaps.
Yeah,
they weren't that damn good. So that's the thing with that is with Kentucky, we don't know what we're gonna get. But that's not my biggest worry. My biggest worry is if you can be consistent and if you're gonna be able to show up and win some games you aren't supposed to.
Do you have an idea of who you would go with? Because apparently, from what I'm reading, Gunnar Hoke was the guy out of spring because he's the more traditional pro-style guy, and he's been in this playbook for 2 years.
Well, that's the thing. I'd go with Gunnar Hoke because, yes, he hasn't taken a snap, but he's taken snaps in practice. He's taken snap with these guys before. Terry Wilson could be a guy that they use in different packages because he's a guy that does have some wheels on him, especially having Benny Snell back there in the backfield, throwing some looks at there where they could do a read option where they can really run some speed options on the outside. I think knowing that Kentucky offense, I think that Terry Wilson could be a guy that ends up nudging himself out if he's able to show that he's a dynamic playmaker, and especially having his second chance now in the NCAA after being in JUCO and after going away from Oregon. I think Hope probably gets the starting job, but I think this is going to be something where we might see a quarterback by committee where whoever's hot goes in. I think that might
Hopefully
be the
not
best
like
thing.
The Kaiser Zaire
That was
quarterback
different.
swap.
That was different though.
I know.
Kaiser was by far the better quarterback. Quit bringing up bad memories.
Let's hope we don't see a game like you just talked about earlier this podcast.
Malik Zaire was supposed to be an athlete and wasn't that good of an athlete. So I mean, it's like one of the coaches that we know when we talk to. The worst combination in basketball is being small and slow. Well, Malik Zaire was big and slow and couldn't throw the ball, and it's the worst combination for a quarterback. So I think Terry Wilson and Gunnar Hoke gives them options. I don't know which one's the best option because we haven't been able to see too much of them. It's going to really be dependent on how they look in their first couple of games. And I think looking at this schedule, I think we might see something where in that Central Michigan game, in that Murray State game, we might see both of these guys get a half or both of these guys get a start. Maybe that Central Michigan game, Hoke gets a start, and then when Murray State comes around at Kentucky, then Wilson gets a start. I think maybe for the first two games we see Hoke start, and if he's winning games and if he's looking good out there, I think they stick with him. But I think after that Florida game, if Hoke's looking all right, if he's looking okay, they throw in Terry Wilson and see what he can do in a start against Murray State.
The rough thing about that strategy is I feel like if you do that, the Central Michigan game's the only game you do that with. And the only reason why is because Florida at the Swamp is my second game on the year. If I don't have my starting quarterback solidified by week 1, and I'm using week 1 to kind of help decide, I want my starting quarterback solidified by that Saturday night because I want to then be able to prep him on Monday, getting ready for Florida and not have to worry about who is still my starting quarterback. The guy on this offense, though, that I think is going to be the biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? The biggest guy that they lean on this year is their running back in Benny Snell. And the reason why I say that is doesn't matter who your quarterback is. This is the kid that shined a lot last year because they have the question at quarterback of who do we start. He's going to have to kind of take over some games and kind of be like, I'm going to be the anchor on this offense. Yes, their offensive line returns 4 of their 5 starters. That should help Snell out. That should even help the quarterbacks out a little bit. But to me, it's like, all right, let's use the run game to help take some pressure off of whichever one of these quarterbacks is our starting or is our starter this year. And when you look at previews and stuff that say that, oh, well, Snell could break the program's career rushing record, he could with a real strong junior season.
Yeah, and I think looking at Benny Snell, I mean, this is a guy that possibly could be gone after this year. Looking at the NFL, being a junior now, being eligible after this year, I think it's going to be someone that's really can make a name for himself, and it's going to be a massive year for Benny Snell, not only for his team trying to help his team win, but majorly like how is he going to help himself at the next level. So Benny Snell, he's a guy that's going to be motivated. He's going to be a guy that with another year under his belt throughout his career at Kentucky, he's averaged over 5 yards per carry, 18 touchdowns last year, 13 touchdowns in his freshman year, and that's absolutely ridiculous talking about a guy already with 31 rushing touchdowns in only 2 years, and he's still got another one after. Benny Snell is going to be a guy that, that's why I'm not too worried about that quarterback situation because both of those guys, as long as they can hand off to Benny Snell, it's not going to be too much of a difference. So I really like Benny Snell. The only downside about him is he's not a guy that's going to come out of the backfield and catch the pass for you.
But that's the thing where, like you say, oh, I don't worry about that because of a guy like Benny Snell. I still worry about that quarterback decision only because if you don't have a competent quarterback back there this season, there's 2 ways I see this year going. Let's say a guy like, we'll say Gunnar Hoke because he's the guy that people are saying had a really strong spring and is the front runner right now. If he comes out as consistent, this could be a team that wins 7 games this year for the first time under Mark Stoops. However, like you listed off, if the quarterbacks aren't up to snuff and the rest of the talent on this team, which is some good talent, doesn't have that support from the most important position on offense, you went through the schedule. Florida would be a loss. I would say Mississippi State would be a loss. Texas A&M would be a loss. Georgia, I'll say LSU. And then after that, I'll throw in even Tennessee or a possible Tennessee and a possible either Missouri, Vanderbilt. Take your pick. I'm going to go with Mizzou because it's on the road and they've got the better just all over situation on offense than Vanderbilt does. If those 2 what ifs and those 5 for sure's for me happen, it's a 7-loss season. You're not even making, it's like you're not just dropping into a lesser bowl. You're dropping out of the postseason altogether.
I don't know if that's going to be really, in my mind, I don't see that happening because I think Central Michigan's a win. Murray State's a win. Vanderbilt's a win. Tennessee, I think, should be a win. Middle Tennessee should be a win. So that's right there, 5 wins. And then the other ones, Missouri, toss-up. Louisville, toss-up, especially with Lamar gone. Texas A&M could be a toss-up, too. We don't know how Jimbo is going to do in his first year. Mississippi State, even a toss-up. And Florida, that's going to be one of the first games for that Florida team. If Florida loses their first game, and I don't think they will because I think they have a really easy game in their first one, but it's going to be the first test of Dan Mullen and that Florida team. Yes, it was in the swamp, but this team, the Kentucky team last year, gave Florida hell at the swamp.
Florida is playing Charleston Southern in their first game.
It's going to be a breeze for Florida on that one. So this is going to be the first real test for both teams. I think that there are 5 for sure wins, and I think there are 3 toss-ups. So that I'm not looking at 5 wins. I'm looking at 5 losses, going 8-5 possibly.
Well, let's put it the same. Like me and you are pretty much the same looking into it.
Sorry, not 8-5, 7-5.
You see 5 for sure wins with 3 toss-ups. I see 5 for sure losses with 2 toss-ups. So for me, that's going to be the kind of with the quarterback is which team are you going to make this team? Are you going to help this team be the one where Sean has them 5 for sure wins, can get them to 7?
You're worried about the quarterback. I'm not too worried about the quarterback.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
If they get the quarterback, they'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. They have 2 options.
But that quarterback situation is like, let's say we have your 7 wins. I'm going to throw your 2 what-ifs as wins. My 2 what-ifs as losses. 7 wins to 7 losses are kind of doing this teeter-totter thing back and forth. The pillar in the middle that it's teetering on is the quarterback. If quarterback comes in, whether it's Hoke, whether it's Wilson, and they're competent, then all right, then it may sway into your 7 wins, and they will have a really good season. Or if they come in mistake-ridden, not really getting
if they're mistake-ridden, then those 5 for sure turn losses.
And it's
I'm just not too worried about it, though,
that's
you have
where
2
it is
options.
But I'm saying it's just what are we going to see? And there's no for sure of what we are.
Let's look at Kentucky. Kentucky's never had great quarterbacks. The last great quarterback they had was Tim Couch. Like, they don't have great quarterbacks consistently. So as long as they're competent, as long as they're going 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and they have like a 55% completion rate, 54% completion rate, they're able to run the read option fairly decent, they're going to be fine.
Last year, and this is a low benchmark because like you said, quarterbacks at Kentucky don't really fly off the stat. If you're a quarterback at Kentucky, all you need to do, at the least in my mind, is have a season like Steven Johnson last year. Complete 60, 61% of your passes, throw for at least 2,000 yards, touchdowns of 10 to 4, touchdown to interception ratio. Let Benny Snell do it all. Let him have his 18, maybe 20 touchdowns this year, and then you will be a team that's winning 6 to 7 games this year.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't think Stoops is going to take a step back because consistently he's either stayed at 5-7, but he's made that jump up to 7-5. I think if he takes a step back, it's going to be 1 loss. But I don't think Mark Stoops is a great coach, but I don't think he's a bad enough coach to turn this team completely around just because of a quarterback change. And the quarterback change, you didn't lose a guy like Carson Wentz. You didn't lose a guy like Sam Darnold. He
had his worst season in 2013, first year, 2-10. Didn't win a conference game. Then 2 5-7 seasons, 2-6 in conference. Then the last 2 years, it's been 7-6, 4-4 in conference.
The East has gotten better, but the East is still young. I mean, Tennessee, brand new coach. We're talking about Vanderbilt's coach possibly being on the hot seat. We're looking at Drew Lock if he's able to have a defense behind him. We're looking at Florida with Dan Mullen being new. South Carolina, Will Muschamp is an okay coach, but is he a great coach? Like, there's the only for sure thing in the SEC East is Georgia, and outside of that, there isn't a for sure team. So that's why I think Kentucky can end up with 7 wins, 5, 8, or possibly even 8 wins.
You look at 2 of the other games. I know Brandon and I talked about these 2 teams last week. You kind of mentioned it. Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher coming in, plus they have a question at quarterback of who's going to start there. And then Mississippi State, they got Nick Fitzgerald, but they've got a new head coach there as well. So there are, the good thing for Kentucky, a lot of questions about these teams. And South Carolina, who we're going to get to next, it really, for me, with them is, are they going to be the same team? Because I didn't expect them last year to be the second best team in the SEC East. So Kentucky, to me, my final thought, kind of to put a linchpin in it, is what do we get from the quarterback? If we get at least what I said from those Steven Johnson stats, don't turn over the ball a lot, give me a few touchdowns, complete 61% of your passes, then you'll be good. But if it's the other side, you're turning the ball over more than you're scoring touchdowns, you're completing under 60% of your passes, then we could see this team slip into, they're in a lesser bowl game or maybe out of the postseason altogether. Final thoughts on Kentucky before we move to South Carolina.
Again, like most of the teams we've talked about so far, if you find consistency, I think this team could be a decent team that gets 7 wins. And the consistency isn't really in the games itself, but really at the quarterback position for Kentucky.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. What do you expect from the quarterback position this year? What do you expect from Kentucky? How many wins and losses do you see for this team in 2018? Let us know what you think down below in that comment section.